Welcome to the course Introduction to Urban Planning. In this session today, we are going to cover 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. We have earlier covered conceptual understanding of urban planning areas and also looked at the urbanization process and discussed on the sustainable development, and based on that, reviewed the need and objectives of the urban planning. Today in this session, we will explore the key constitutional provisions, the 73rd and 74th Amendments, which facilitates the process and strengthens the impact of planning by decentralization. Accordingly, the coverage will include review of planning objectives, determination of needs to meet planning objectives, constitutional provisions to address the planning needs, the 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Acts, emerging role of Town and Country Planning Department, which emerged through 73 and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. Accordingly, the learning outcomes would include, after completion of this particular session, you should be able to discuss the planning objectives. You should be able to determine needs for meeting planning objectives. You should be able to list and state various constitutional provisions to address the planning needs given in the 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, such as various institutions, powers, roles and responsibilities, finance and time frame. You should also be able to review the emerging role of Town and Country Planning Department in the context of the Constitutional Amendment Act. We saw in the previous class that how urbanization is taking place all over the world and at a considerably faster rate in our country. Furthermore, we also saw that challenges of natural disasters that the cities are facing across the globe. We also reviewed the urbanization pattern in our country. Following that, we comprehended the purpose of urban planning from the perspective of sustainable development. We saw that our objectives for planning ranged from covering aspects of sustainable development, nurturing innovation, ensuring economic development, reducing poverty and attaining human development, reducing inequality, making city inclusive for women, youth, older people, differently abled people, poor, vulnerable groups, indigenous people, people of diverse culture, color, and orientation, ensuring better health, housing, livelihood, education, and safe environment for all the people living in cities, making our cities resilient. Further, the objective included containing migration, targeting sustainable resource management, attaining environmental sustainability, providing necessary access to services to all, including water supply, sanitation, energy, transportation, and communication. Likewise, allowing the community to realize their full potential in economic, social, and cultural role, and so on. So, we saw a range of objectives which the planning has to address. In order to shape our cities, to attain what we aspire for, planning is needed. Planning allows us to look at what kind of planning interventions we would undertake to shape our cities. How much money we can invest, what are the infrastructures that we need for well-being and for the development of our place and the people. In order to do so, what do we need? What do we need to meet the planning objectives? In order to do so, we need a team, a responsible team with power to undertake the job, with defined roles and responsibilities, involved people. We need tools, procedure, methods. They need to have realistic time frame. They need to have access to finances. They need to have sufficient human resource, and they need to have required information for decision making. We need institutions with power to execute their defined roles and responsibilities to bring changes on the ground. For example, we need power to make people adhere to the building bylaws. We need power to acquire land to provide infrastructure, services, and so on. We will need power to decide what do we need in our neighborhood and plan for our future. So let us see what are those institutions, how do the institutions get the power in our country, and where and what roles and responsibilities are defined for the purpose for them. The highest law is usually referred to as a constitution in a country. A constitution is a set of fundamental legal, political rules that are binding on everyone in the country, including ordinary law-making institutions. The legal political rules provide the structure and the operations of the institutions of the government, political principles, and the right of the citizens. The legal political rules are based on widespread public acceptability. These legal and political rules are harder to change than ordinary laws. For example, in order to change a law, a two-thirds majority vote or a referendum is needed to bring any kind of amendments to be done in these rules. Further, these legal political rules as a minimum should meet the internationally recognized criteria for a demographic system in terms of representation and human rights. It has to ensure that all kind of people from all the inclusiveness we are talking are involved in the process. So, for us in the Indian context, the power is provided by the Constitution of India. So, in order to facilitate better planning and implementations, major change in the structure, operation of the government institutions and the political principles was undertaken through the provisions of 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. The 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, referred to as Part 9A of the Constitution, made provision for decentralization. By doing so, it ensured democracy in the establishment and operation of local self-government, meaning governance by the local people. It conferred the power to the people to plan for themselves and participate in the decision-making process. The first provision the Constitution made was that it created a third tier of governance, the institutions, the panchayats, municipalities and ward committees after centre and the state government. The provision allowed the constitution of the panchayats at 3 levels in a state as per the Article 243B of 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act. First, at the village level, second intermediary level, which may not be constituted in a state having a population not exceeding 20 lakhs, and at district level. The provision likewise allowed constitution of municipalities in every state according to the urban area in the Article 243Q of 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. It specified Nagar Panchayat of transitional area, that is to say, an area in transition from rural to urban in character. Second, we see municipal council for a smaller urban area. And third, we see municipal corporation for a larger urban area. Further, the Act made provision for ward committees through the Article 243S, consisting of one or more wards within the territorial area of a municipality having a population of nearly 3 lakhs or more. You must have interacted or voted for your ward commissioners in your locality. Further, we see that Part 9 and 9A of the Constitution of India provides complete details on the panchayat and municipalities like definitions, what it constitutes, composition of the institution, the panchayats or the municipalities, reservation of seats, how many women would be there, how many men would be there, and who will come from which strata, duration of the institutions, or how these members would be disqualified, powers, authority, and responsibilities of these institutions, power to impose taxes by them, and funds of how they would mobilize. Constitution of Finance Commission to review the financial positions of these institutions, audit of the accounts of these institutions, elections, the application to the union, how it will apply to the union territories, and so on. In this image, we can see Part 9 details provided for panchayats. In this image, we can see Part 9A details provided for municipalities. So we see how the Act provided the structure in the form of third level of institution like municipalities, panchayats and ward committees to facilitate planning, decision making and execution at different levels within the state, so that we could really get connected and be part of the development of our own neighborhood and villages. We furthermore see that the Act makes provision for the Committee for District Planning, as we had seen earlier, which we will see frequently later in our other lectures to follow. Article 243ZD provided for constitution of District Planning Committee at district level in every state. The DPC consolidates the plans prepared by the panchayats and municipalities in the district and prepares a draft development plan for the district as a whole. Here we see how differently planning works integrates. We also see that the local bodies would prepare plans and the DPC would provide interaction with the municipal bodies and Panchayati Raj institution in addition to the planning, and will also undertake conflict resolution. We also see provision for Committee for Metropolitan Planning. Article 243ZE provides for constitution of a Metropolitan Planning Committee MPC for planning a metropolitan area having a population of 10 lakh or more, comprising one or more districts and consisting of one or more municipalities or panchayats. In the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, it was envisaged that the district and metropolitan planning committees will consolidate plans prepared by the panchayats and municipalities in the district and metropolitan regions. It was required to prepare a draft development plan for the district, metropolitan region as a whole and send the draft district and metropolitan plans to the state government. Such procedure allowed integration of plans at different levels. As per the constitutional mandate, the district and metropolitan development plans are required to coordinate spatial planning, sharing all natural and other resources, integrating provisions of infrastructure and environmental conservation. So we see how the Act provided structure within the state, both in the rural and the urban area, and in combination to facilitate planning, decision making and execution at different levels and within the states. This structural change facilitated provision for units which further facilitates better understanding for local problems of our cities and villages and allows better implementation of the solutions in the given scale compared to larger entities like state or the central government. So we see how these amendments gave us the institution to plan and decide for our neighborhood and cities. The 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act came in effect from 24th April 1993, and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act came in effect from 1st June 1993. These changes created a new landscape for urban local government in the country. Prior to these amendments, there were provision for local bodies in panchayat, however, was not distinct as these amendment acts, like how you have seen. This act made local self-government in urban areas and also in the rural areas a clear-cut constitutional obligation. Now let us look at the time frame provided for these institutions. The Constitutional Amendment Act specifies the fixed time frame of 5 years for the bodies, panchayat and municipality from the date of appointment through the Article 243E of 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act and 243U of 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, with further instructions to complete elections to constitute a panchayat or municipality before the expiration of the duration of the existing body. Now let us see what kind of powers, roles and responsibilities these institutions have. The Act clearly states the power, authority and responsibilities of panchayats and municipalities in the Article 243G of 73rd and 243W of 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, subject that legislature of the state by law endorse that. The Act provides the power and the authority to the panchayats and municipality. Those are necessary for them to function as an institution of self-government. Further, it also provides the power to the state government to prepare law that may contain provision for transferring of powers and responsibilities upon municipalities, panchayats, committees, with or without conditions with respect to preparation of plans for economic development and social justice, performance of functions and implementation of schemes as may be given to them. The Act provides 11 and 12th schedule which lists the functions, roles and responsibilities of these bodies. 11th schedule is for panchayats and there are 29 items in the 11th schedule. 12th schedule is for the urban local bodies and covers 18 items. The 29 items in 11th schedule range from functions related with agriculture, land improvement, land reforms, land consolidation and soil conservation, to irrigation, water management, animal husbandry, dairy, poultry, fisheries, range from social and farm forestry, minor forest produce. We can also see that they have to handle small-scale industries, food processing industries. They are responsible for khadi, village and cottage industries. We also see that they are responsible for providing housing. In the rural areas, they are responsible for providing water, drinking water. They are responsible for making provision for fuel and fodder. We further see that they are also responsible for construction of roads, culverts, bridges, and so on. We also see they are responsible for electrification in the area. They are responsible for non-conventional energy sources. They are responsible for running the poverty elevation programs. They are responsible for providing education, majorly the primary and the secondary school education. They are responsible for technical training and vocational education. They are responsible for adult and non-formal education. You can also see that they are responsible for creating libraries. They are responsible for undertaking the cultural activities, responsible for market and fairs, then responsible for taking care of the health and sanitation facilities. They are also responsible to propagate the support the family welfare schemes, social welfare schemes, welfare for the weaker section. They are also responsible to look into the public distribution system, the PDS system, and they are responsible for maintenance of the community asset. So we see through the roles and responsibilities of panchayats how in the rural areas we try to attain the sustainability goals of poverty elevation, equality, livelihood, education and health assigned by this schedule. Likewise, in the 12th schedule, we see the functions and responsibility assigned to the urban local bodies that include urban planning, including town planning. They are responsible for regulation of land use and construction of buildings. They are responsible for planning for economic and social development, responsible for construction of roads and bridges, responsible for providing water supply for domestic, industrial and commercial purpose. They are supposed to ensure public health, sanitation, conservancy and solid waste management. They are required to make provision for fire services. They are supposed to facilitate urban forestry, protection of the environment, and promoting of the educational aspects. They are supposed to take care of the interest of the weaker section of the society and also take care of the differently abled people. They are supposed to undertake activities for improvement and upgradation of slums. We further see that they are responsible for poverty alleviation in the urban areas. We also see that they have to provide urban amenities and facilities such as parks, gardens, playgrounds. They are supposed to promote cultural, educational, and aesthetic aspects in a city. They are supposed to provide facility for burials and burial grounds, cremations, cremation grounds, and electrification of crematoriums. We further see that they are responsible for provisions for cattle pounds and then also responsible for prevention of cruelty to animals. Further, we see that they are responsible for maintaining vital statistics, including registration of births and deaths. You must have gone for your family members to register these things. Providing and maintaining the public amenities, including street lighting, park lights, bus stops, and public conveniences. Lastly, we see that they are also responsible for regulation of slaughterhouses and tanneries in the cities. So, these are the range of responsibilities, duties assigned to the urban local bodies by the Constitution of India, the 12th schedule. So, we see how the different concerns we discussed in the previous session are translated on ground through assigning power and roles and responsibility to these institutions. We further see that how finances are made available to these bodies to execute their roles and responsibilities on ground. The Constitutional Amendment Act provides the details on the finances of panchayats and municipalities in the Article 243H of 73rd and 243X of 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. We see that one of the source of financial resource is taxes. We see that it has been left to the legislature of the state to specify the imposition of taxes. We'll be seeing the finances in detail in the later modules. Further, the Act makes provision for the State Finance Commission in the Article 243I of 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act. Article 243Y of 74th Constitutional Amendment Act extends duty power of State Finance Commission to review the financial position of the municipalities apart from Panchayati Raj institutions and make recommendations to the governor. We further see that these amendments do not apply to the scheduled areas. The scheduled areas have been identified in the Constitution of India. In terms of Articles 243M of 73rd and 243ZC of 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, these provisions shall not apply to the scheduled areas and the tribal areas as referred to in the Article 244 of the Constitution. Now, let us move towards the role of Town and Country Planning Department. We see that new role of Town and Country Planning Department emerged because of the provision of the 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act that included advice and technical assistance to the state government on matter pertaining to spatial planning and development as well as implementation of state programs. Initiation of action pertaining to provision of legal support in relevant acts for socio-economic, spatial planning and development processes and on the suggested regional and urban development planning system. We see the other role included assistance to the State Urban and Regional Planning Board in formulation of state perspective plan and strategy of spatial economic development of the state, having regard to proposal containing in district and metropolitan area development plans. Likewise, the role also involved division of the state into various planning regions, taking into account the physical, socio-cultural, economic and climatic considerations and formulation of plans of this spatio-economic development to serve as a guide for resolving inter-district developmental issues and providing basis for inter-district cooperation and coordination with a view to prepare district development plans in a more harmonious manner. Further, we see the role includes scrutiny of the district and metropolitan area development plans for approval of the state government, taking into account the state perspective plan, spatio-economic development strategy, and proposals of relevant planning regions covering the district of the metropolitan area. We further see the role include ensuring that respective settlement development plans prepared by the local authorities are within the framework of the approved perspective plan of the state or the settlement. The role further include technical assistance to the local authorities, if so requested at the cost of concerned body. Further, the role involves preparation of the development plan in case of default by the local authority, district planning committee or the metropolitan planning committee if they are directed by the state government at the cost of the concerned planning body. Moreover, we see the role includes provision of necessary research input directly or through the help of consultants in formulation of policies, strategies, norms, standards, laws, regulations and rules pertaining to urban and regional planning and development matters. We further see the roles include provision of manpower, training facilities. Further, we also see it includes establishment of an urban and regional information system and dissemination of information. So, we saw that information is also an important part for planning purpose. So, this responsibility lies on this particular agency. So, summarizing what we covered today, we looked at the planning objectives, reviewed the planning objectives from a previous session when we discussed urbanization and sustainable development. Then we also looked at what do we really need to meet these planning objectives. Further, we saw various constitutional provisions to address the planning need, which are given in our Constitution of India, the 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, including the institution, the details about the institutions, the powers, roles, responsibility, finances, and the time frame involved in the process. Then we looked into the emerging role of Town and Country Planning Department in the context of these Constitutional Amendment Act. So you can see what all at the higher level, what kind of provisions are made for the planning purpose, and in the future lectures we are going to see different levels where these interventions have been done. The references for these sections involve majorly the Constitution of India and the URDPFI guidelines and the other sources. Our coverage was limited with the scope to make you aware of the topic. There are enormous readings and movies available to explore. Few are suggested here. This is not an extensive list. You may feel free to suggest more from your experience. Please feel free to ask questions. Let us know about your concerns you have. Do share your opinion, experiences, and suggestions. Looking forward to interacting and co-learning with you while exploring cities and urban planning. Thank you so much.